today we are talking about hand-drawn animation. Well, not exactly hand-drawn animation because this is a tool that you can use for cutout, compositing, or anything really where you need planning. But in its roots, it was a tool designed and made for hand-drawn animation. So more precisely, today we are talking about the infamous Xsheet, also known as exposure sheet, or dope sheet, or time sheet, or if you studied animation in French like I did, feuille d'exposition. Now, a little disclaimer. In life, I do have trouble pronouncing certain sounds, and X sounds followed by S sounds are my worst nightmare. I'm tired of re-recording these videos, so if I screw up saying Xsheet, that's just life. Okay, we're just gonna roll with it. Yeah, so like I said, Xsheet stands for multiple different things. So mainly, it is a tool that will allow you to see your animation, much like a timeline, but instead of being a timeline that is like horizontally, it is like a vertical timeline where you really see clearly what name and what number your drawings have. Now you can see that in this Xsheet, it's a bit random. This is because when I was doing this animation, I was changing my mind all the time and redoing drawings and stuff. So my drawings are not in the right order. We're gonna see that we can quickly just select those and, change the name of these drawings per frame, so it becomes very easy to organize it. You can also take all these frames and you can change the exposures of all of them so that it's the same. It is a very useful view to plan out your animation, but especially students and beginners, I feel you. That thing is scary and confusing. When I was in school learning about animation in my first class, our teachers really insisted on us using the Xsheet. I don't think it was the wisest thing. I think the Xsheet is an amazing tool and I do use it on a daily basis, but I know what I'm doing. So if you're a student just starting out with animation, I think it's legit that the Xsheet and the whole planning part with the annotation here doesn't make much sense, and that's because you lack experience. I had a click, I started to really love the Xsheet when I was a bit more at ease with animation, because I think it's very hard to plan in advance your action if you don't really know how to animate all that much. So now with the mileage I have, I do know that if I want to do an action, I can plan it out, and I know how much drawings I need to do a throw. I know how much drawing I need for a reaction, a jump and stuff. And I think this is something you're just gonna grow up and be able to do more and more. But even so, I do recommend sitting in this video because annotation part aside, the Xsheet is a very, very useful tool for you to have in your tool belt. Alright, so let's get started. How do we use the Xsheet and where do we find it? So the Xsheet is very easy to find. You can go into the view here, press plus, and find Xsheet. It's always at the bottom because it's in alphabetical order. Once you have your Xsheet showing up, you can use these scroll bar here to scroll left and right. If I had a scene long enough, I could also use it to scroll up and down, but I don't have it. In here, you have a little triangle. It shows you more options. We're not gonna cover those today because they're a bit more advanced, but just so you know, they're here. So I'm gonna collapse them again because I don't need them. And then basically these layers are just mirrors of what your timeline has. So if I click on my Dan layer here in my timeline, it's gonna be highlighted in my Xsheet. And if I click on Aaron's layer in my Xsheet, it would be highlighted in my timeline. But I can't see it because I don't have enough room in my timeline. Because usually to see a lot of things in your timeline, you would need to have a longer timeline, really longer. Oh, and now I see it. But then it takes a lot of space and you don't have much space to draw anymore. Another thing you could have done is just to click on your layer and then press O to find it in your timeline. But, I do like the Xsheet because it really just focuses on your drawing layers. You don't really see the pegs or any special effects you have. So yeah, it's just a bit more streamlined and really just focusing on your drawing instead of seeing everything in your timeline. So usually, I will have my small timeline here and I will handle most of my animation in my Xsheet. So yeah, once you have your Xsheet, what do you do with it? Well, here you have the number of your frames. And in here you have the numbers of your drawing. So if I take my Aaron layer here, for example, here it is written 10 with a K. This means it's drawing number 10. It could also be called drawing snail or drawing dog or something. Like, the name you give the drawing doesn't matter. And the way to rename a drawing is by right-clicking, going to drawing, and rename the drawing. This is very important to know because if you double click here, you're not gonna rename the drawing. You're just gonna call whatever drawing you write here. So if instead of 10 here, I write 16, then it's not going to rename my drawing as 16, but it's gonna take the 16th drawing and bring it up there. Watch my camera view when I post it. And then here, this is my drawing number 16. So this is very important. It's a common mistake that people make. They think they're gonna rename, but it doesn't work like that. And as you can see here, my frames are really all over the place because I was trying different things. I use that scene a lot for tutorials, so it's all messed up. So if you want your drawings to have names that make sense, you can simply select all of them by clicking on the first one and then shift clicking on the last one. You can right click, go to drawings, and in rename you have a very cool option called rename by frame. And if you click here, it's going to rename your drawings according to the frame they were attached to. So this is great because then they're going to be in the right order. I often do that before I hand out a scene to another coworker for another step of the pipeline, because then if there's a little mistake that happens, at least they know where the drawing was and something. It's just, I think it's a bit more clean, and it takes like 1 second to do. And you know, it makes everybody happy. Another thing you can do with the Xsheet is select all your frames, for example, and if they don't have the same timing, you can go to exposure right here, and you can write the number you want. So if I write 2, then all my frames are going to be set to 2s. If I go here and I write 4, then they're all going to be 4 frames long. So it's pretty useful to do that. You can also use the arrows to change it, and it's very nice. If you want to see thumbnails of your layers, you can also click here. You have a button to show thumbnails, and it's going to show you the thumbnails of what layer you have. This is very great if you're trying to just organize yourself. And you can also create layers in your Xsheet, and creating layers in the Xsheet is a bit different than creating them in the timeline. This is because when you create a layer in the timeline, like this, you can only create drawing layers. But in the Xsheet, if you click here, you can create columns, which are a bit different than just layers. So if you create a new column, by clicking here, you're gonna have a little window that appears in your screen. You can give it a name and all that. But in type, you're gonna have, of course, drawing, but there's a ton of different other types that you can get, such as timing, columns, sound, 3D path, rotation, expression, and annotation. Mainly the one that I use most of the time are drawings, timing, expression, and annotation. And if I round it up to 2, the most I use is drawing and annotations. Because, you know, mainly what I do is I draw animation. Timing columns are great in compositing if you want to do some cool functions with pegs and link things together. Expressions are amazing if you know your way around expressions. I'm not that knowledgeable anymore, but I used to be. And annotations are something I love to use, and that's actually what I'm going to create right now. Add and close, and this is going to give me an annotation column on which I can write. I will cover these in a different video because we're out of time today, but hey, this is what I use to plan my animations like this. So usually I listen to the sound and I can be like, okay, this is where he says go, 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 and well lasts for all these frames, so it's very easy for me to just plan my animation in advance. And sometimes if I work with a teammate, it's also easier to plan animation and then just send it away and they can focus on it. Or you can also write your dialogue to know where your lip sync is gonna be. So it's very useful, but I'm gonna cover that in another video because we're out of time for today. The last thing I want to show is how to delete the columns. You can just press here to delete your column. And last but not least, if you are in your Xsheet, I really recommend just clicking around, and if you right click, you're gonna find lots of different options that are very interesting in exposure, in drawings. And if you go to the burger menu, I talked to the dev team this week and they told me that this is a burger menu, and I just rolled with it. There's a lot of other options you can have access to, such as sequence fill. Sequence fill is amazing, especially if you're doing like hand-drawn effects or something, because then if I create a new drawing layer, add and close right here, and I want to have drawings every 2 frames, you can just make your big selection, right click, go to exposure, sequence fill, and then you can plan to have your starting value as 1, increment 1, hold 2, and then this is going to give you drawings one after the other that are already there, so you don't need to create them. Also, you could go to exposure, fill cells randomly, and if my minimal value is 1 and my maximum value is 10, and I want to keep whole number, then it's going to randomly give me frames from 1 to 10 in my areas. Back in the days, we used this a lot to do falling rain because it was random drawings and stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed and that you're going to have fun exploring the Xsheet, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye!